was trained in fine art, and I combine sculpture with painting, drawing, light and digital technology. The course that I run on Unlocking Creativity is really teaching people the process. It's a very structured course on one hand, and it's very open on the other. One of the first things to do is to pick something you like. It could be like, I use the model quite a lot, and get people to draw using pencils in their left hand, in their toes, in their mouth, using lots of different materials, moving them on quite rapidly. You could do that though with, an animal sitting there. So you put yourself out of a comfort zone by using lots of different materials quite rapidly, and that gets you to be more explorative, and then you discover things that are not expected. Now you could do the same thing with writing in a way like free-fall writing, where you just allow things to come out without controlling it. But you need to set yourself through, if you like, a series of paces in order for that to happen. And when I'm working, that's the other thing, is I draw, I paint, I sculpt, then I use another material, and I know that none of these pieces will be the end product, but they will all inform the end product. So that's one aspect, and then I get people to learn about colour and different emotional effects of different colours, different textures, using all the senses. Using the senses gets you out of your head into your heart, so that you're connecting directly with something more experiential. I get people to work on identifying what they care about most, and what their passion is in life, and that could be, like when I'm working with young people, anything from football to what happens to the universe. And I don't influence people, I just help them to explore. Sometimes people don't know, so they have to try things out, and then I link the passion with the skills, and through a particular process where and this is why an experiential workshop like this is very useful, and actually I think it's useful for everything beyond. I get them to move to music. It's beyond just visual. And what happens by the end is that people connect to different things. So the last day, they then end up doing the project which brings it all together. So for one person it might be a sculpture, for another person it might be, written word with a painting. For another person it might be a drawing. And I don't mind what it is. My job is, I see it, is to help facilitate them to connect using skills and meaning to what really matters, and communicating. Different things work for different people, and that's why being experimental is good, because what might work for you now may not work in a year. And if you keep repeating what you've always done, it might be very brilliant, but it might not help you to grow, and your work might not evolve. It'll just be more of the same, albeit very good. I do look at what other people do. I don't copy. I might use elements to inform. But if you're being truly creative and you want to extend that into a way of life, the way I see it, art and life and creativity are not separate. So even when I'm not physically making something, I'm still practicing art. Wherever I go and whatever I do, if something interests me, I either pick up a bit of it and keep it, or I photograph it, or I tape it, or I film it, or I get the piece of music. And I keep it together. It doesn't have to be in a book, but when I'm working on a project, I do tend to use a book. I do like a brainstorming on every level, on every sense. What body move, what body position does it feel like? So my giving birth from the universe was starting crouched and opening up, whereas a supernova exploding is very much more an expanded position. So I notice, I pay attention to colours that people are wearing, textures, so I collect it. So I build, if you like, my own little museum or little collection. And then when I work, I use different bits. I collect postcards, newspaper cuttings, magazines. Don't limit yourself. So I don't have a traditional sketchbook. I have whatever seems to be relevant, and I write. So if I wake up in the middle of the night with an inspiration, I write it down. I find a way of keeping a record. So even if you don't think it's relevant to what you're doing, keep it. It's like a bank. You can use it for another project. And when I go out, sometimes when I go walking, I'm as much working on my art as if I'm in the studio, because it gives you a space to sense. And you can work on colour, composition, content when you're not actually physically in contact So it's an ongoing process. One of the most important things is to turn up in your studio every day, even if you're don't know what you want to do, particularly if you're feeling blocked. Because it's a bit like saying, I'm committed even though I don't know what I'm going to do. And the other thing is, and this is very important I feel for creatives, often people come to me and they say, I'm stuck, I'm confused, I don't know what to do. And I just say, that's so normal. That is just so much part of the creative process. Don't worry about it, embrace it. And so I've got a lot more used to being uncomfortable with the creative process. And when I go through periods of not working, it doesn't bother me so much because I know that when I come back, I'll be refreshed and I'll have another perspective. And I think that trying to control it is not a good idea, although you do have to discipline, and that's the difficulty. So when I'm working on a project like the one in Langley Academy, at a certain stage I was working 7 days a week in the studio and very long hours and completely immersed. When I'm not on a project, I might be working on other aspects of art, like developing a presentation for something, or and I think it's good to allow it to flow. But if I don't do any art for a while, the other thing that you can do is go to a class, like go and do something you've never done, like pottery or life drawing, or you have to keep refreshing yourself. It's a bit like you will get bored, so keep putting in new material to excite you. And if you don't know what to do next, do something that buys you time. So I had a lot of projects, and then now I've had a gap. But within the gap, I seem to have been really busy. I'm exploring new things, looking at collaborating with different people. It's just happened kind of naturally because of what I'm sensing I need to move into. The other thing I'd recommend is having a mentor. When I'm working on a project, I do go to somebody who's very experienced, because it's always good to have a sounding block, as well as a peer review group. It's good to talk with peers, but sometimes it's good to have someone who's right out of your peer group who can look at your whole picture and say you may be missing something that hasn't occurred to you. I think that you don't have to go to art college to be successful, but I think that it can really develop you as an artist to go to art college, because you have people looking objectively and they may not understand what you're trying to do. And at a certain point you either buckle to what they're saying, or you make a stand and you say, this is who I am and I'm going to do it anyway. But also they can offer you, you learn skills of how to express yourself, how to present, professional practice, you make links within the industry. So I would recommend anyone who wants to seriously, professionally be an artist to go to art college. But there's quite a lot of different approaches, and I would recommend you to really research in depth what the approaches are. There are some art colleges which are just skill-based, and they take you to a very high level. They're not necessarily always accredited, but they will take you to a very high level of painting, drawing or sculpture. But they don't really look so much at the contemporary scene. Then you get some of the more larger art colleges, which are very much about giving you a studio space and leaving you to develop autonomously, but then giving you crits to link your practice to contemporary practice, contextualizing. What you do, how does that link to the modern art world? But your left is not project-based, like when you're doing GCE, SE or A-levels, it's not project-based. You really have to self-motivate. And then there's the Art Academy, which is where I trained, which, if you like, brings a bit of both worlds. It's very skill-based in the first 2 years. It was a diploma that I did, but it's now been converted into a degree. It's very skill-based the first 2 years, and the last year you're on your own to do your own stuff. As well as learning skills, you have projects which are about you. They ask you to say, who are you as an artist? What do you want to express? What do you want to elicit as a reaction from other people? And then, how are you going to do that? Because you really need to think, if I want people to feel uplifted, what materials do I use? Or if someone asks me to do a project about anxiety, I may not use light, I may use darkness and charcoal. And so you need to think about matching your materials to the aim of what you want the viewer to feel. And that would be the same in any art form. In the school curriculum now, I understand, I mean, and from the people I've worked with, it's very much focused on a lot of project work with, depending on where you are, more or less skills training, because it's very much about meeting the academic curriculum, and that takes over actually helping people find their true creative expression. And finding true creative expression is not an easy thing, because it's not just saying, okay, do anything. It's actually helping create a space where you combine skills with experimenting with what's inside the person to be creative. So I think that the school, when I look at people who are at school and what they do, they also tend to do a lot of copying and mimicry. So they'll look at an artist and they'll copy. So they come out with maybe being very skilled at copying. But you can't be a creative artist and just copy. You have to go beyond that. And you either need that through someone to teach, to facilitate that with you, or you need to somehow find that in yourself. And most people aren't able to do it without some input. But at art college, and that may or may not happen at art college, it did happen at the art academy, because it opened me to follow my passion and follow my experimental. And I ended up doing something totally different from anyone else in the course. And when people graduate there, each person, it looks like each person's been at another college. And that's how it should be. It depends, you need to ask yourself, what do I want? And talk to as many artists, as many colleges, go and visit them. See what feels right to you. Don't decide too soon. So you need to, because that can limit you. Some people think, I want to do this. But actually there might be something even better than that. But unless you expose yourself. There's a lot of research which shows that the arts, and that's beyond the visual arts, the arts broadly speaking, affect very greatly both mental and physical well-being, and the ability of people to succeed. And so my hope is that in time the arts, health and well-being agenda will become higher and more prominent, because I think they should be teaching arts to mathematicians, to scientists, and looking at how to marry the two. Not that one's better than the other, but how, the greatest scientists were all highly creative, were creatives. And I think it depends on where you are and the art teachers there. In some places art is seen as less valuable than an academic. And that if the head of the school, often people say that art's important, but they don't actually make the changes to create the space to happen. And a lot of the skills teaching seems to have been edged out with the new kind of curriculum and pressure.
So if you've got an art student going through their GCSEs trying to get an A-level in art, even if their school's not being the most supportive environment, what advice would you give to them as a developing artist?
Well, in addition to what I've already said, I would try and find some practical work outside. I would go to look at doing some workshops in other colleges, so that they have more experience of the practical, maybe linking with what they're interested in. Go on summer courses. Look at ways to go beyond what they're being asked to do. Or form a group and get someone, a bit like I came into XTRA.art, to come in and look at, you can do like Crits, look at their work and discuss their work, and discuss with them what they might do by finding out what it is they want to do. I mean, that would be, it wouldn't have to be very often, but that would be a really nice way of just bringing in other kinds of influences.